something fun here.
Again, thank you guys for coming. I don't need this, do I? Do I need this? Okay.
Kurt, does he need that for audio?
Oh, use that so we can get on the audio. That'd be great, please.
Yeah, so thanks again for coming out, guys. Just nobody really knows who I am, but my name is Brian Hudson, and I've been playing drums since I was about 10 years old, and I'm not 10 anymore. But you know, I know Mike and I talked a little bit about kind of what I should talk about, and I think just a little bit about my background. I think if you guys are interested. So again, I've been playing a long time, and grew up in Clearwater, Florida. Went to music school for about a year and a half at the University of South Florida, and kind of did the normal music thing that everybody does in school. Played in the big band, played in the trio and the symphony orchestra and all that kind of stuff. Got burned out and moved to Athens and played a lot of music, but didn't play in the music school. So, but obviously fell in love with Athens and played with a lot of bands. And kind of growing up, just a little bit on some of my inspirations. Probably like a lot of you guys, you know, it ranges kind of all over the place. I mean, I wrote them down here because there's so many of them. But Vinnie Colaiuta, Steve Gadd, David Garibaldi, Dave Weckl, Manu Katché, Matt Chamberlain, Russ Miller, Steve Jordan, the list goes on and on. Probably same list as a lot of you guys. Mostly in the jazz kind of studio world, not so much in the rock world. You know, kind of funk as well. So, but I guess my biggest gig, if you want to call that, is I played with a band named Memory Dean. Memory Dean was on Capricorn Records. They had kind of a bigger hit in the 90s. For those of you that were old enough and to remember the 90s. As far as the music scene. So did a lot of playing with those guys and obviously had a lot of fun. And then also, you know, just kind of played around town, around the Southeast with a bunch of different bands, blues bands, funk bands, a couple cover bands, tribute bands, I should say, which was a lot of fun. And also got into the church kind of world as well. Played at Johnson Ferry Baptist Church, just not too far from here, for about 11 years, 12 years, give or take. And now we live out in Lake Oconee, about an hour from here, hour and a half from here, and there's a North Point campus out there, so I play at one of the North Point campuses out there. So That's a lot of fun too. And there's my good buddy, Brian Stevens. Hey, buddy. Sorry to call you out, but I couldn't help it. So yeah, just wanted to tell you a little bit about that, and kind of what I've been doing lately is mostly doing a lot of studio work, remote studios, which I'll talk about, kind of how my approach to that, and that whole mess. Mike and I were talking a little bit about that and how difficult that is. And I also play with a smooth jazz artist named Carol Albert. Carol's done pretty well, actually. She's got a couple of Billboard charting jazz hits right now, and played all over with her, and hope to do a lot more dates with her in 2024 as well. So. I think one thing I wanted to talk about is just kind of how I approach the kit. I don't think my style or my approach is unique, but it's a little bit different. Some of my stuff's angled a little bit. My drums are up really high. Somebody was asking me earlier about that. So for me, I know it's hard to see with me standing back here, and even when I sit down, it's much more difficult. But playing traditional grip is, obviously, you guys saw that. That's what I've always played. And that's mostly because of my heroes. Most of those guys that I mentioned play traditional grip in some capacity. But so my stuff is really kind of high, and everybody's different. And the way I approach the drums is, I think we're all different. We're all different sizes, different weights, etc. And so we're going to approach the instrument completely different, which I think makes it so cool that a guitar is a guitar. No offense to guitar players, but the drums, everybody's setup is completely different. Everybody's cymbal selection is different, and whether it's a different line, I use Paiste, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think my whole goal is to make sure when I sit down that I'm comfortable sitting behind the drums, and I don't have to think about what I'm going to do, what I'm going to hit, that I can basically be free and have the freedom to do whatever it is in my brain to basically the musical ideas I have in my brain to come out and not have to worry about it. And so for me, again, everybody's different, but for me, it's traditional grip. Things are high, my drums are high, and just kind of things. The cymbals are a little bit low, but the drums are a little bit high. So that's kind of that's my approach. But again, I decided to come down here just to kind of talk about my grip. Do I really need to use this? So my biggest thing over the years is just struggling with getting the right balance with my sticks and making sure I have the most relaxed positioning for my sticks. And so I was fortunate to have a lesson with a couple of pretty heavy hitters that really turned me around. One was Dave Weckl and one was Chad Wackerman. And both of them saw my grips and basically told me to throw it out the window. I got to tell you a story about the Dave Weckl lesson. So I think I told Mike this. So I was able to meet up with him. This is probably, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I can't remember. And he was playing in town, and through a mutual friend in LA, I was able to meet up with him and talk about nerve-wracking. He asked me to sit down at his kit, which was really weird and all angled this way, and asked me to play. And he walked around me as I was playing. So think about how nerve-wracking that is, having your hero walk around. But outside of making fun of my sticks at the time, I think I had a Jack DeJohnette pair of sticks, which he did not like, and gave me one of his pairs instead. But the biggest thing for me is I was playing with a lot of fingers, and this part of my grip was super tight, which caused a lot of tension in my forearm. And I, again, was playing traditional, and he just tore this apart and just absolutely said, "This is going to injure you because of the tightness here." And so we had about a 2-hour lesson, and we started having this conversation about bouncing the ball. You bounce the ball, you put it down, it comes back up, you send it back down again. There's not a whole lot that you do there other than just kind of keep pushing it down. The ball bounces back up. And I think the same theory, at least from his perspective when we spent some time together, was to allow the stick to do its job, right? I mean, just to kind of throw it down there like that. And that's how I like to approach things. I think it's easier than just trying to force it like this. You might be able to get fast on this, but you can tell in my arm right there, it's just a lot of tension right there. And so we kind of worked through that, and then going to visit with Chad Wackerman, his whole thing is the Murray Spivak, if you guys are familiar with that. Murray Spivak, I know Mike is a longtime teacher, has taught, Mike, David Garibaldi, tons of people. And his whole thing is relaxation as well. The Moeller technique of kind of throwing the stick down and keeping it loose, always keeping this open right here. I think it's, for me, it works because it just allows for me to be a lot more relaxed and not have that tension, as I mentioned before. So I don't know if you guys have any questions on that, but that's kind of how I do things. Again, that's just me. Oh, sorry, that's not me. That's him.
I'm awake.
So, Mike, did you have a question?
I have a question. I noticed with your left hand, beautiful finger technique, but you're not doing it that way, you're doing
No.
it this way,
Yeah.
with the thumb.
So, Weckel had this, the finger technique to go like this, like back in the 80s and the 90s. I just kind of started going like this and using these fingers as a guide, really on this side, and just using the Moeller technique on this side as well. It's a little bit different.
It's wide open that way, though.
It's not like bouncing a ball because you're not bouncing a ball like this, but the idea is just to kind of keep that whipping motion going on both sides, whether it's the match grip on the right side or over here. So just try to keep this hand going as much as possible, because I used to go like this and use these fingers a lot. And I felt like, for me at least, again, this is all just me, everybody's different, it strained my arms a little bit too much, and I felt like keeping it open a little bit just allowed me to be more free. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's why I kind of do that. It's just kind of wide open, and I just use those fingers as a...
Thank you. I came to that same thought.
Yeah.
Appreciate the answer.
Oh, sure, no problem. So that's just a little bit about my grip. I thought I'd share that with you guys just because I've learned from a couple of the best. And the cool thing is I was able to go to Chad Wackerman's house, and he gave me a bunch of exercises that I still do today. And it's amazing, I can't remember who asked me when we were in the back how I warm up. One of the simplest things I do is a 5-minute roll, which sounds so simple, but if you do that, it opens up all of your muscles and just completely opens everything up. And then I do a bunch of other stuff, but I usually start with that, just put a little timer on, then I do some singles, usually start off about 150, 160, and just kind of do that for 2 minutes and kind of go up until I just can't stand it anymore, until I sound like crap. But between those two, for me, and that's part of the Murray Spivak model that Chad Wackerman taught me. So it's kind of cool. Like I said, that's just the way I do things. Everybody's different, but that's kind of how I approach things. So I'm going to jump back up here for a minute. And
Brian, I do have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
The height of the pad that you have right there is, and I couldn't see relative to where the top of your snare drum is, but is that
about
the
the
same?
Whoa.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about before. It's really high.
Yeah.
My whole thing is I feel like your arm should be straight. I think if you're playing below that, especially with traditional grip, I just think it's uncomfortable for me. And for me, having everything up kind of high it just kind of helps me move a little bit easier, and I just think it feels better for me. Again, my goal is to try to be the most relaxed I can be, sitting down. And if this was super low, I would probably hit my leg. This seat's also a little bit high. It just doesn't make sense for me. I feel like I'm straining with my arm down like this. My wrist turns a little bit too much here, and having it up high it allows me to keep these arms straight, both of my forearms straight, because I just feel like anything below that is just not necessary. That's me. So that's what I was saying. And I thank you for that question, because I think it was hard to explain that back there. Everything's really, really high for me. I think if you were playing match grip, it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, which I'm terrible at match grip, by the way. But so that's, and even sometimes you can see some of these toms are angled. Even sometimes my snare is a little bit angled on this side too, because the traditional grip was from the Civil War, or even before that, Revolutionary War, where there was just a big snare right here, and the only way to play it was to hold your stick like this, because you couldn't do this, And so, is it outdated? Probably, but it works for me, and it works for a lot of other folks as well. So, but does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Okay, here we go. remote studio work. I don't know, does anybody do that? Anybody do remote studio sessions? I know Mike said he does. Of course, Brian does. Anybody else? So I get a lot of questions about this. I'm sure you guys probably do too. It is it's a rabbit hole that never ends. Trying to figure that out, right, Brian? I mean, it took years to try to figure this out, and it's been very, very fulfilling. I've done hundreds of songs from artists all over the world, and it's been a lot of fun. And so basically what I do is, like I said, I get a lot of questions about this, so I thought it might be good to share this. So I have a pretty simple rig. I mean, it's basically two interfaces. I use Universal Audio 8P, Apollo 8P interfaces that are connected together, just mostly to give me more inputs. I use Logic. Of course, you can use Pro Tools or basically any of the products that are out there right now. It's just the product that I use that I'm comfortable with. And I think once you get in on a product and you learn it, it's hard to switch over. I know Ableton, we use that at church, and I'm still learning that. But so, obviously, like anything, I have a ton of microphones and constantly looking for the best sound for my room. And that's the biggest thing is I have a dedicated room. I've got sound treatment materials from GIK Acoustics, which is right down here in Norcross. They do a phenomenal job. Their stuff is just fantastic. And I've got some Oralex as well. And the cool thing about that is if you're willing to set this up and jump into this whole thing of remote sessions, is if you go through GIK, I think some other companies have this too, but GIK has a consultant that you basically take a picture of your room and give him the dimensions, and then you tell him what materials you have, and then he basically tells you where to put everything. Because I'm not sure I would know how to start with all that. And it's actually worked really well. Again, it gets a little pricey. It's a rabbit hole that never ends. We were talking about that earlier with microphones and all kinds of other stuff. It just never really ends. But so that's kind of what I do. And the thing about remote sessions is you really never know what's coming your way. I mean, you could get a rock song, a country song, a polka song, jazz. It doesn't matter. And I'm really active on a website called Air Gigs, and it's worked really, really well for me. I know there's some guys in Atlanta that are pretty active on that as well. And so it's definitely a challenge. And every project that comes in is totally different. You've got some projects that come in where you've got sample drums. Maybe it's a demo. Sometimes there's nothing, and you just have to they hire you to do what you do. But most of the times there's some kind of sample, and I usually ask for some kind of sample track or music that, hey, what are you thinking on this song? It sounds like this, maybe it sounds like Tom Petty or whatever, but is there a particular song or a particular artist that you want me to go listen to? I did a session a few weeks ago where the guy asked me to go listen to the Monkees, of all things. So I did. I went back and brought that back up in my brain and kind of did whatever the Monkees do. It worked out. So you just never know what's really coming your way. And so that's the biggest thing. And for me, I ask a lot of questions because without that, there's no way you can be successful. Obviously, kind of going back to the composition piece and partnering with somebody. On this, I ask, obviously, the tempo. Usually try to get them to send me a click. Sometimes it doesn't always line up. So it's, there's definitely some ebb and flow and some challenges with all these projects. Some of them are professional musicians with real producers, around the world, and others just are, in their bedroom. And sometimes I turn down projects where the music's just not that good. So, or I do it and just don't tell them to use my name. I shouldn't tell that, but anyways. But I also do some studio work as well, actually in a studio working with musicians. And so I've been very fortunate to work with a guy named Mark Neal recently. Mark is, he's a native Georgian, moved to LA for many, many years and moved back to Georgia. That seems to be a trend, getting more of these folks to come back to Georgia. I know Dave Cobb, who's a 6-time Grammy Award-winning producer, just moved back to Savannah. He was in Nashville forever, working with Chris Stapleton and Randy Carlisle and Jason Isbell and tons of others. But so Mark won a Grammy with the Black Keys. If you guys are familiar with that band, they had an album called Brothers that won 5 or 6 Grammys, and Mark brought that to life and worked in Muscle Shoals. I think he was one of the first sessions of Muscle Shoals in 30 years. And so he basically took the Muscle Shoals idea and took it to his hometown of Valdosta, of all places, and set up a fantastic studio down there. So I've been very fortunate to work with him, and You know, that's a whole different experience because for this case, I don't want to tell Mark's secrets because he would kill me, but for that case, there was nothing. I knew nothing. He actually told me it was a country song, and I got there, and it was not a country song, not even close. It was more like a groove kind of funk thing with a little bit of a country edge. But he told me I was. What did he say? He said just do cross stick and hi hat. I was like, okay, well that's easy. Man, it wasn't even close to that. So the way we came together on that is he basically recorded something on his phone and had the singer sing to it. It was very, very rough. And he let me listen to it like this, and then I charted it out. And that was the last session I did with him. So totally different from, you know, the remote session stuff. And we were actually in a studio together playing with musicians at the same time. Novel concept, right? And he's got an old school analog system. That's all I can say about it, because again, he would kill me if I said anything else. But very cool stuff, but a totally different experience. And frankly, you know, that's working in that environment. For those that have worked in the studio is much different. Obviously, when you're doing remote stuff, you can take your time and play it as many times as you want. As many times as you're willing to do it, obviously, based on your time. There, you got 1 or 2 takes, and you got to get the heck out of there. So, but it's fun. You know, it's cool to kind of keep things fresh and do both. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions about remote sessions or anything like that. Yeah. What's your name?
Ricky.
Ricky. Okay. Thanks for coming, Ricky.
About the air gigs.
Yeah.
Could you expand a little more on that?
Yeah.
So can like anybody use? Is
Yeah.
it like an app
It is. Yeah.
that sends you like click tracks or whatnot?
Yeah, so, yeah, good question. So there's a couple of online apps and websites. Sound Better is one, Air Gigs, I think there's a few more. Those are kind of 2 of the bigger ones. Air Gigs just got bought by somebody big, I can't remember who it was, or excuse me, who it is. But yeah, you basically go on and set up a profile and put some clips of your playing, really studio work. I think there's like a video section, and you just kind of put yourself out there and wait to see what happens. You know, some days or some weeks I'll get 3 or 4, and then I won't have anything for 2 weeks, and then I'll get another 3 or 4 or 5, and I have to just plan it out. So it kind of ebbs and flows, but it's actually worked pretty well. There's some pretty heavy hitters on there now. Tom Brecklin's on there, played with Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock and everybody. Robin Ford, he's on there. The good news is he charges a lot more than I do, so I try to keep that in mind. But of course, he's a monster, and anybody can hire him. But yeah, it's basically open to anybody. It's a great service. You know, it's they pay you, and or excuse me, the artist pays in the system. You can see that the money is there, and then once you complete everything, then they obviously transfer the money to your account. And so it's pretty seamless. Once you kind of get into it, then it works pretty well. So it's a lot of fun. You should definitely check it out. Yeah, the guy that actually runs their social media is here in Georgia. So a guy named Luke O'Kelly, who does all their social media stuff. So he's a great dude. So any other questions about that? Yeah, what's up?
Not about air gigs, but you mentioned several times talking about the Grammys.
Oh, okay.
How does one become a voting member of the Grammys?
Okay, yeah, so that kind of goes back to the studio work. So for the Grammys, you have to have so many credits in order to qualify as a voting member. There are different levels of membership. There's just general membership, which I think anybody can join. And there's, I think, some associate memberships. And then the voting member is you have to have so many credits, and they verify all of them. You have to keep those credits up every single year. Sometimes I think for me, I had it for a couple years. So I got to, so you have to constantly go in there and update your information. It's basically a profile internally with the Grammys. And the difficult thing about that is when you're doing sessions, there's no credits. There's no credits on Spotify or Apple Music or anything like that. I mean, I've got a CD over there. I mean, that's like vintage, and it was only a few years old. But so my goal is to I have to track that stuff down and try to get the artist to say, hey, will you at least post something on social media that shows that I did this? And a lot of them will do that. Some of them I have to nudge them a little bit because you have to maintain that in order to keep the voting status. And it's a lot of fun for me. I've been doing it. I guess I've been a voting member for almost 10 years, 8 years now, and it's a lot of fun. And it's cool because it just allows, you get the first round and there's just thousands of songs and artists I've never heard of, and just going through that and listening and learning about a bunch of new music is super fun. And I usually have to talk to my kids about who are these people. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So thanks for that question. I appreciate that. Yeah, Dave, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
When you go to live studio, are you bringing your own drums? how do you know what to bring, and if you don't know what it's going to be when you get there, how do you approach that?
So the first time I worked with Mark was a couple years ago, and I brought like everything. I mean, that bag is filled with like 15 Paiste cymbals, and he just looked at me and goes, "We don't need those." He had this old school Gretsch that he loves, the Black Keys play it on. Everybody comes to the studio plays on that. Charlie Crockett is a new guy that played, his band played on it. And so I was able to sneak in a ride cymbal that Paiste actually gave me. I sent him a song of one of the tracks that I was doing and said, I really need something for this particular song. And they're awesome. You know that. I mean, they're just fantastic. And they listened to the song. They said, okay, this is the ride. We're shipping it to you. I said, okay, how much do I owe you? And they actually gave it to me, which was amazing. I think I brought it, actually. I'll bring it out in a minute. It's a Masters Dry Dark. I think that's what it is, which is amazing. So yeah, in that case, I brought a bunch of stuff, and he just said, just leave that in the lobby. And I think it really just kind of depends. You know, I mean, some places have kits set up. Other places, you know, you want to bring your own thing. I mean, this is basically a recording custom, and I'll talk about this in a minute. And so that's obviously, I use this in the studio a lot because you really can't beat the sound, at least in the studio. But yeah, that's a great question. It really kind of depends. I try to sneak in the Paiste cymbals as much as I possibly can because they've been really good to me for a long time. So, but thanks for that question. Any other questions on any of that stuff? Yeah.
And you said like you sent Paiste a song and they sent you a symbol. Like how did that go? So
I'm an artist, a Paiste artist, and I have been for, I don't know, 2015 maybe, 16, something like that. So 6-7 years. I just did that because I was looking for a particular sound, and they know their cymbals better than everybody. I mean, Mike just met Tim Shahady. You probably know Tim. I know Brian knows Tim real well. Brian Stevens also is a Paiste artist. Brian, you should come up here. I keep calling on you. But Tim is kind of the East Coast guy for them, and he actually they just bought a bunch of stuff from Paiste. So thank you for taking care of that. But I actually haven't seen the presentation. I don't know if you guys have, but Tim knows these cymbals inside and out. And I know what I like, but he can tell you everything about the cymbals. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to send it to them. Like I said, I'm an artist, so I know the guys and the team over there, and just sent them this song and just said, hey, I'm really looking for something specifically for this song. And they sent me a cymbal, and it worked out great, and it made the album. So yeah, so that worked out. So does that answer your question? Okay, cool. That's a good segue because I'm going to talk about some of this equipment here. So I use, outside of Paiste, a lot of these brands are kind of brands that a lot of people don't know about. Mike and I were talking about Sakai. Has anybody heard of Sakai?
Yes.
Okay, a few people. So Sakai has a very, very long history. So they made all of the Yamaha drums, or most of them I should say, in the 80s and 90s. So all the kits that you've heard, the recording customs, the maple customs, the birch customs, all of that were made by the Sakai family and the Sakai drum company. So Yamaha decided to go make most of their stuff in China. Sakai started their own brand. That's their logo. They killed it. They did really, really well when they started off. Had a lot of artists go over, big players, Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins, Gary Novak, tons of other players, a lot of jazz guys. And then they got a little bit a little bit over their head financially and filed for bankruptcy. They're back. The company's actually called Sakai Osaka Heritage. These drums are actually handmade in Osaka, Japan, and that's where their overhead was killing them, is they were spending way too much money on the actual handmade process. And so, but they still are around. They're owned by a company called Korg. Obviously, the keyboards and stuff like that. Korg has some distribution opportunities as well, and Sakai is one of them. So the drums are very, very similar. They're just made in Taiwan now, not in Japan. So this kit actually it's literally a recording custom, just their version of it, which is the same thing. A little bit different air holes. The mounting system's way different as far as the mounts here for the toms, a little bit different, but that's kind of their deal. That's kind of their style. And their new kits look almost exactly like that. They're just made in Taiwan. They're still expensive though. So yeah, but they're beautiful drums, and I'm very excited to keep playing them. I've got another kit that they have that's a 3-ply kind of Gretsch kit that's super cool for a lot of studio work and jazz playing and stuff like that. So, and And then Regal Tip, Regal Tip, most people probably know the brand Regal Tip. They've an iconic brand for many, many years. They've had some issues recently. I think they're back. I know they're back. It's kind of a slow process, but they are making drumsticks now. And if you guys have never played them, they're phenomenal sticks. The lacquer is amazing, and they're just, I love them. I mean, they have some of the best brushes, I think, that any you can buy anywhere. But I'm excited that they're back. They had some family issues. Mr. Collado, who started the company, passed away recently. And so, so they're under new management or new ownership, and hopefully they'll be coming back pretty strong. So, but very cool sticks. And I did have a bag. Let me grab this. I'm sorry to keep going back and forth. All right, so these are. So there's a company called Headhunters. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. Probably not. They're based in Canada, and they have some of the most crazy sticks you can ever imagine. And I want to show you guys some of them. So they make drumsticks. They also make. That's gonna fall. It's gonna be loud. Check these things out. These are called Fat Bastards. I think there's a pair over there that you guys are gonna give away at some point. So these are really cool for like a train beat on a snare drum or something like that. They were very fortunate to get a guy named Jim Keltner as their endorser. If you don't know Jim Keltner is, you got to check him out. He's been on every recording ever, I think. But then they also made some kind of bundle rods for Vic Firth for a long time. These are bamboo, and they have a little foam piece in the middle for more bounce. But those are super cool too. I think there's a pair of those over there as well that giving away. But yeah, they just kind of, the guys that own it are just super creative. Look at these things. I don't even know what these are. I'm not sure I've ever used these, but part of my solo I used some mallets with jingles in it. That's theirs as well. So they just kind of come up with really cool stuff to kind of keep us all thinking outside the box. And that's kind of the sound on a pad. But so I love it. They're super cool guys. They're two brothers out of Canada, and they just literally have a lab up there and just kind of come up with a bunch of different ideas. These are some bundle sticks that have metal in them, so you get a little bit more definition in the cymbals. But really cool dudes. These are more like square, which I think these were made for Vic Firth as well. So anyway, so super cool stuff. And so I want to talk a little bit about Peisty cymbals. Woo! Yeah, there you go. There's actually a couple of artists here, and it's super excited to be a part of the family. And what I have up here is kind of a combination of several lines. So I've got the Signature Dark Energy series. So the Signature alloy is a proprietary alloy for Peisty. It's patented, and nobody else has it. And they've used that with, obviously, their Signature model, which was originally made for studio work. And then they created this Dark Energy line, which, just super cool underneath. Just some of the most beautiful instruments I've ever played and looked at, frankly. But so the Signature line is the traditional series, which I actually have. I think a ride in there. I'm going to pull out in a minute and let you guys hear that. So they have the traditionals, they have the Signature, and then they have the Signature Dark Energy. I'm also playing the two Modern Essentials, which is the 602 alloy from long time ago. That kind of went away. They brought it back, and they signed a guy named Vinny Colaiuta, who's, I would hope everybody knows who that is. Vinny basically created this line for Peisty, and it's a 602 alloy with a little bit his touch on it, and they're absolutely brilliant. So I've got 14-inch hi-hats and an 18-inch crash. And then I've got some Signature hi-hats and 2002 little chip bell, or whatever it's called over there. I can't remember what it's called. Cup chime, that's what it's called. Let me pull out the cymbal that made me want to start playing Peisty again. So I had Peisties when I was little. I saw Terry Bozzio do a clinic, and he was a Peisty guy at the time. And thanks, Mike. And he had black color sounds, and I had to get them, so I bought them. And they were awesome at the time, and I still think they're very cool. They actually brought those back. So that's kind of how I started. I went to another company, and then I heard this Flat Ride, which was Paul Wertico from Pat Metheny band. He uses this cymbal, and I just loved it so much. And so this is the reason I started playing them again. So, but that's the traditional traditionals. This is the signature traditionals, which is hammered and laid in the bottom as well. Pretty cool. And let me pull out this cymbal that I was talking about before. Sorry, it's like a Christmas bag over here. Sorry. This is the cymbal I was talking about. It's a Masters Dark Dry Ride. This is the one that they sent me for that studio. Anyways, that's a little bit different. The Masters series I know you play those too, don't you? They're amazing. They started off as just kind of rides, and they ventured out into crash cymbals. Thank you. It's hard to manage everything when you're holding a
Yeah,
microphone.
you got a lot going on.
But anyways, I got some more in there, but I just wanted to share those with you guys a little bit. So any questions about Peisty? I can't do it justice with what Tim does, but just wanted to brag a little bit about what they're doing there. I also have... I also work with a company called SimPad. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them. So these are foam washers instead of the regular washers that you get with your cymbals. And the idea here is that they allow for more sustain and more projections in your cymbals. They don't choke your cymbal at all. And I just love them. I think they're super cool. They allow, you can't really see, I don't know if you guys can see the splash, but they don't choke your cymbal, and they basically move up and down and allow for more, like I said, more sustain versus having the I'm drawing a blank, I guess I have them right here, the felt washers. I personally just think they choke your cymbal a little bit too much, but these are fantastic, and I think we have some of those over there that they sent me. They were very gracious to send those over, and you guys should definitely check them out. They're super cool. So a track, going back to my remote sessions, this is a track from a band called O'Connell and Love. So Larry Love is the singer in the show Sopranos. The opening song, Woke Up This Morning. If you've seen The Sopranos, you know that song. He's got a very deep voice. They reached out to me a couple years ago, and I played 3 or 4 songs on their album. And so this is Larry Love and a guy named Brendan O'Connell that came together and wrote this song. And this particular song was pretty cool because this kind of goes back to the remote sessions, never knowing what you're going to get. They sent me this idea, and their idea was more of a straight groove. And I played along to it, and I didn't like it. It didn't make sense to me. And so I came up with this part, which I'll play in a second, which is totally different, and they really dug it. And it made the album. So I think for me, and I think anybody that's doing session work, is never be afraid to be creative, especially if they're hiring you for you. Sometimes they're hiring you just to play the part that's exactly the part they want. In this case, they were a little bit more open-minded. It was definitely a gamble for me to go back to them. They're based in the UK, by the way, and say, hey, what do you think about this? And they loved it. So I'm going to play along to that real quick. Hope you guys enjoy it. It's totally different from that last song I played, by the way. Wait, before I do that, I got to show you guys this. So this is another Headhunter's creation. These are brushes with a wire around it to give it a little bit more definition on the cymbal. Super, super cool. They're called dream catchers. I use them all over the place, especially on the snare. They just, like I said, just provide a lot more definition. So super cool. Like I said, these guys are constantly thinking of really cool stuff. So. Sorry. So are you guys familiar with that? So that's obviously where, I mean, obviously there's some layering going on, but that's where the sticks really don't fall in the same place. Very popular with a guy named Gary Chafee, Steve Gadd, obviously David Garibaldi. But that's really kind of a big part of my playing, good or bad. That's kind of a thing that I've gravitated towards. That was heavily linear, that particular groove, which was kind of a Latin-ish kind of thing going on. But again, they sent that, when they sent that to me, it was more straight, and I sent that to them thinking, gosh, they're never going to accept this, and they loved it. And I can't remember if I actually put the snares on. I think I did. But anyway, so that I just wanted to mention that, and I didn't know if you guys had any questions about linear playing or anything like that. But it's, I think personally for me, I think it allows for more space in the groove, and it just allows for the groove to be deeper. That's just me. Again, some of my idols do that, and I've kind of copied them. And again, going back to the Kobe Bryant thing, copied them, but then made it my own thing. So anyway, so I just wanted to mention that as well. That's a big part of my playing. So any questions? Oh yeah, sorry.
So can you show, like, can you do a few examples of linear
Yeah.
playing?
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea.
So the biggest thing is, like I said, is that the sticks traditionally don't fall kind of at the same place at the same time. Let me read this real quick. So linear it says there's no point where two or more voices are sounding at the same time. So now with that, obviously there's some layering where it's going to line up eventually, but and that's just going to happen based on what you're playing. But the idea is to kind of keep things a little bit separate. Let me show that a little bit. So obviously you play a regular groove, and then let me play kind of a groove first, and then I'll do a linear groove, and just kind of love your thoughts on that. Obviously a regular group, right? So linear for me would be see how nothing's kind of hitting at the same time? There is some layering, meaning they hit at the same exact time. But the linear is it's kind of a combination of the layering as well as kind of the separation between the different limbs. And does that make sense? That's kind of what the approach is for me, based on, me copying and stealing things from all the guys that I've listened to over the years. So if you listen to Steve Gadd, which I hope everybody does, if you listen to David Garibaldi, which I hope everybody does, a lot of what they do is linear playing. So I'm happy to play some more, but I think now this next song is in 7/8, but that's kind of an example. I could do another one if you want, but I hope that answers your question.
No,
so.
understood.
Okay, cool. Any more questions on that?
when you're doing studio work, and like you wrote that drum part, are you being compensated differently because you're part of, writing the tune?
When you're doing your own stuff, no.
No, but like that
Yeah.
the one you played before this.
So usually in that case, it's just a flat rate. For the most part, that's kind of, sometimes I'll get an actual contract for some of the songs I play where they'll say if this gets picked up somewhere, then you get a little bit of royalties on it. But for that particular track, that was just kind of a one-time, hey, play this song. Actually, I think there's 4 songs on that particular album, so it was just kind of a flat rate for that. So I think it kind of really depends. It really depends on the situation. So anyways, any more questions? Sorry for getting off on that last song. It was it's hard when there's no click, for me at least, on a song like that. But anyways, thank you guys so much. I enjoyed it so much, and thank you so much for coming.